When you think of Duelist in Valorant, you probably think of players like Tens, maybe Baby Bay, Asuna. Now, obviously, those are some of the best players within NA Valorant, and probably have some of the best aim in the game. Because these are the players that we think of when we think of a Duelist, a lot of the times the expectation is that our Jett is going to be able to updraft and pick up 3 kills while they're in the round. But that's stupid, and you're stupid too. Aim is obviously a desirable trait when playing Valorant, but there are more desirable traits, and I'm going to share those with you today so that you can play an effective Duelist role without having incredible aim. Starting out with understanding space. This may be the most common thing that people hear about Duelists, is that their job is to create space, which is true, it is. If you think about it, all of a Duelist utility is intended to make it easier to take duels, hence the name Duelist. For example, let's take a look at something as basic as Phoenix's ultimate. It is an ability that is used to remove the risk of dying. You can't die when you have Phoenix ulti activated, and thus it lets you take as much space as you want pretty much for free. What is generally going to happen when you use Phoenix ulti is that players are either going to challenge it and try to deny you that space, or they're going to fall back and give you that space and play to retake it. Raze's ultimate functions in a very similar way. And this is the reason that Raze is picked so often in professional play. It's because she has the single best space creating ultimate in the game. I don't know about you, but I'm a simple man. I see a rocket, I run. And don't get me wrong, if you have good aim as a Duelist, that is awesome, but their kits are already set up in a way to help them win gunfights. And the reason for this is because it'll help them take space for their team. If you think about it, other characters in the game probably need better aim than a Duelist. Naturally, the riskier job in the game is always going to be for the first person on site, because they're the one grabbing that info, right? However, if I'm playing Duelist and I walk out onto a site where there's a 50-50 and I get beamed by the guy in the corner that I didn't check, is that my fault? Of course not. If anything, that's our Sova's fault for not reconning. But you know what's optimally going to happen? That Sova's going to trade the kill, and he's hopefully going to go on to win the round. And at the end of the day, if we win the round, that's awesome, because I was used as a Duelist, as a tool, to enter that site and get my team onto site. But the shit that pisses me off is when we get later in the game, things aren't going as well, and I, as a Duelist, get yelled at by my Sova, because he has more kills than me. Your aim isn't going to make that big of a deal when you're peeking 50-50 angles, but you know whose aim is going to matter? That player who's trading you. Realistically, if I have a Duelist who understands their job, I would prefer that the better aim player on the team is playing a support role where he can play PostPlant, because then that way we can get onto the site and then we can have our best aim player being the one who is actually playing that PostPlant scenario. He's also the guy who is not peeking 50-50 angles where we just have to roll the dice on if he stays alive or not. Because although Duelists are great at taking space, they are not set up well to deal with PostPlant. They don't really have any stall, they don't really have any information gathering, they're basically just bodies used to entry site because their kits are very good at entering sites. I would much rather have a Killjoy Sova Omen in a 3v3 than a Phoenix, Jett, and Reyna. Obviously, you're not going to run 3 Duelists most of the time, but you get the point. Their kits are meant to take space, and when taking space, they are likely going to die. This is why other agents are meant to play PostPlant, is because they're not as good at taking space, but they are better at holding it. Honestly though, Duelist being able to take space is not even the most desirable trait in a Duelist player, and this is something that most players probably do without even realizing it. No, the most desirable trait in a Duelist is that they know how to— oh shit, is it time for a Patreon ad? I think it is. If you're looking for some VOD review type content, feel free to check it out in the link below. It's just $5, and for that, you'll be able to access all of the Patreon VOD reviews, as well as have the opportunity to get your VOD reviewed yourself. It's also free to cancel within the first month period, so if you guys don't want to risk anything, then you don't have to. This is a great way to support the channel while also getting access to more content, so if you wanted to check that out, link in the description below. Anyways, what I was going to say is that the most desirable trait in a Duelist is being able to recognize openings in the enemy's defense. Because the Duelist is going to be the one who is creating the space, it's important that they know when they have an opportunity to create that space and when they don't. Because oftentimes in Valorant, openings are slim, and if you don't capitalize on them quickly, they are going to fade. Don't get me wrong, it's not just the Duelist's job to capitalize on those openings, but just for the sake of this example, picture this. You and your team know that there are 2 players on A and 1 on Catwalk. You get a pick on the enemy Killjoy who pushed into B main. Because of this, you know that there is at max 1 player on B. What you want your Duelist to do is recognize this opportunity and move quick to capitalize on it. I, as Sova, could technically still capitalize on this, but my job is not to entry, and my character is not built for that. If we have me entering, not only does my utility use a lot of value because it's not usable for this, and if I die, I can't use it for PostPlant, but my Phoenix's utility loses a lot of value because I am now ahead of him, so he can't flash himself into sight because he's going to flash me. He can't use his wall to block off vision because I'm already on site, and his ultimate's not going to do much if it's the one trading our actual body on site already. Since Duelists are meant to be the first one on site, it's not really much use of them playing Duelist if they're going to be sitting back and waiting for other people to entry first. If they can't recognize the opportunities, they might as well play a support role. This is why as a Duelist, it's incredibly important to have an understanding of what is going on around the map. Because if you're just blindly flashing out into 3 players without knowing anything, you're probably just trying to force opportunities where there are none. Similarly, this also includes understanding where your teammates are. Because if I'm playing Jett and I'm just blindly dashing into U-Haul while all of my teammates are working B, that's not really going to do much for us. It doesn't matter that I've created space because nobody's there to capitalize on it. Remember earlier when we said that Duelists have the riskiest job? You shouldn't be risking things if you know that your team's not going to get anything out of it. And this is when we introduce a concept called risk versus reward. For example, if your team starts out the round with a pick on B and then your Jett decides to just dash into U-Haul alone, this is a very risky play that yields very little reward. Your whole team is working B, and you're already ahead in numbers. If you dash into U-Haul alone, you're risking your life, numbers, you're potentially giving up a gun if they're on eco, and not only that, you're giving up all of the territory that is between you and your team. Because after you've died, you don't know if the players have pushed up short, if they're behind you, if they're anywhere over there. It's gonna make it very difficult for your team to retake that territory. So as you can tell, you're risking a lot, but is the reward worth it? That's the big question. If you're behind in numbers, making a play like this might actually be worth it. If you're playing a 3v5 and it's not likely that you win the game, if you're able to dash into a location like that and take control of it and potentially pick off a player or two, that might be what your team needs. However, in this situation is the Jett takes control of U-Haul, which doesn't really help her team because her team's over on B. I guess they could rotate back, but you never know if Jett's gonna die on their way back or anything like that. They're already ahead in numbers, so even if she kills somebody and gets traded, they're still ahead in numbers. But since her team already has an advantage, there's not really much sense in taking a solo duel like this. Instead, if this Jett were to back up, play with her team, and actually use her dash to engage onto B site rather than into U-Haul alone, her team can follow her up. It'll help them take control of a territory that they can actually utilize, and it'll help her team win the round with very little risk added to it. I don't care if my Jett has the best aim in the world. If she's dashing into U-Haul solo and getting herself killed, I would much prefer a Jett that has 0 kills but is dashing onto site to help us engage. And this is why I move on to my last point, and probably the title of the video. Is aim important for Duelists? And obviously the answer to that is yes. If you can't aim, you're not going to be able to kill things in an FPS game. That's just basic logic. However, too many players believe that getting frags and having a high grid shot score is what makes a good Duelist, and that's just not true. If you're playing Duelist and you finish the game with 6 kills, you probably had a pretty rough game, and that's fine. It happens. Just because kills aren't the most important thing in the game does not mean that it's always okay to drop 2 kills a game. But it's also important to remember that even if Sova has 2 more kills than your Phoenix, that doesn't mean that Sova's playing a better game than that Phoenix player. As we established before, if Sova isn't using his utility correctly anyway, that Phoenix player might have a really hard time entering sites. And if every time that you entry, you're getting shot from a 50-50, is that really your fault? Sometimes it might be. Sometimes maybe not. I hope this video was helpful for some people understanding the game better. I've been playing a lot of Duelist recently, and it's not necessarily that I think that I'm the best Duelist player, but I think that I'm really good at recognizing openings in the enemy's defense and taking advantage of it. There are definitely games where I match MVP, and there are definitely games when I bottom frag, but whenever I'm playing Duelist, I understand that my role is to create that space for my team, and you can bet your ass I'm going to do that. Remember, you're going to get yourself killed sometimes as Duelist, and that's okay. Just remember that whenever you go in, if you're going to get yourself killed, your team is going to get something out of it. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video and wanted to check out our VOD review series on the Patreon, that'll be linked down below. As always, if you're not subscribed to the channel, feel free to hit that button down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.